Good evening, everyone. I'm Jessica Connick, Regional Director of FGI, and on behalf of Fashion Group International of St. Louis, we would like to welcome you to tonight's virtual event, St. Louis Made Success. As some of you know, we were set to hold this event in mid-March, and in the days leading up to the event, we slowly and sadly realized that we were going to have to put it on hold. A silver lining is that a few weeks ago, we were brought the opportunity to hold this event at tonight's Venture Cafe series through another amazing group, the St. Louis Mosaic Project, and under the umbrella of STL Made campaign. All of these groups serve as a catalyst for innovation, connections, and entrepreneurship in St. Louis, which perfectly aligns with tonight's event. Before we dig into everything, let me zoom through some helpful tips for tonight, since this is my first time attempting to lead a big virtual event. Can everyone except for our panelists please mute yourselves so that we can easily hear tonight's speakers? We will also have a Q&A time at the end of our chat, so if you have questions for the panel, please type them in the chat area on your screen, and we will get to as many questions as we can at the end. And thank you so much for Lauren from Venture Cafe, who's going to be helping us out with that later. We will not be using the raise your hand feature tonight, so please put any questions you have for the panel in the chat area of your to thank Suzanne Sierra, Senior Program Manager at St. Louis Mosaic Project, an initiative of the World Trade Center of St. Louis. Suzanne has a really cool job, and we're lucky to have a group like Mosaic Project here in St. Louis. So I'm gonna let Suzanne tell us a little bit about Mosaic Project.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yep, great. I'm so excited to be here tonight as manager for the St. Louis Mosaic Project. And we are a regional initiative of the World Trade Center of St. Louis. And a lot of people don't realize that we have a World Trade Center here. We're one of, I can never remember the total number. I think it's 13 around the world. And we together are part of the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. And that is the economic development agency for the city of St. Louis and for the county. And so at the end of the day, what Mosaic is all about is what the partnership is all about, and that is the economic vitality of our region. Mosaic's focus is to be a welcoming, to be welcoming to the foreign born to St. Louis. So we are a staff of 2.5, and my executive director is here in our squares here, Betsy Cohen. And what we do really is we're about making professional and social connections for foreign-born individuals who find themselves in St. Louis. They've come here either as the spouse of somebody who has been transferred to work for a company here, or perhaps they're an international student, or they have migrated to St. Louis from another state. But at the end of the day, these foreign-born individuals come to St. Louis. They know no one. Oftentimes, they are ready and willing to work. And if you think about what a sort of connected place St. Louis is, and it's all about who you know and where you went to high school, these individuals come here with no network, with no social connections. And so what Mosaic does is we act as a catalyst for connection. From an economic development standpoint, you know, we work with a lot of immigrant entrepreneurs, and one of our programs is a international spouse group. And again, it's as it sounds, it's the spouses of individuals who have been transferred here from all over the world to work for one of our corporations. And these women oftentimes are living out in the suburbs and know no one. And so the spouse group has been this grassroots meetup platform that has connected more than 400 women from 70 different countries that are here now living in St. Louis. And several of them actually, so the way that we tie this into the fashion scene is that several of them are have worked in the fashion industry in their countries of origin. And so again, we meet them, they're trying to figure out, well, how do I connect to the scene here? And that's how we're sort of here today. Back in February, we held an event with Fashion Group International, with the St. Louis Fashion Fund, with Lena Chowdhury, who is also, I know, joining us tonight with Daphne. And it was all about informing our foreign-born community and others about this amazing local fashion entrepreneurial ecosystem that exists here. So I'm thrilled to be here. Really happy that all of you have showed up. And I'm looking forward to hearing from two friends of Mosaic, Lisa and Daphne, and looking forward to hearing from Mary, who of course I know of, but have not met before. So thank you everybody for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. So I see a lot of familiar faces in our audience tonight, and thank you to our FGI members and friends for tuning in tonight. For those of you who are new, we are also happy that you chose this event as your first FGI event. The Fashion Group International is a global nonprofit professional organization with 5,000 members in the fashion industry, including apparel, accessories, beauty, and home. The FGI mission is to be an authority on the business of fashion and design and to provide educational programming to its members to become more effective in their careers. We'll actually be celebrating our 85th anniversary as a chapter next year, so we have a long history of solid programming and support of the local fashion industry here in St. Louis. I'd like to ask our FGI St. Louis board to raise their hands physically. I know normally we have them stand up, but you can hopefully see them out in the crowd there. We have a volunteer board who works tirelessly behind the scenes to run our local chapter and events, and we appreciate all that they do. We offer our members exclusive opportunities, resources, discounted event tickets, along with access to our entire FGI Global Network. So please feel free to follow us on social media at FGISTL on Instagram and FGI St. Louis spelled out on Facebook to connect with us and stay updated on our upcoming events and resources. If you'd like information about membership or joining our mailing list, also feel free to reach out to us through social media. And lastly, before we jump into tonight's panel, I'd like to share this video that shares a little bit more about our FGI history. And this is my moment of truth. Lauren just taught me today how to share my screen, but this video I love. So let me share this with you guys.
Many of you know the name Snow, the very, very famous editor-in-chief of Clarke's Bazaar, who was involved in the birth of FGI. I don't remember ever going to a fashion group presentation where there weren't some aha moments where you're like, wow, that really makes sense, or I hadn't thought of that, because the events are quite diverse. They cover everything from, you know, the beauty category to fashion, men's, and so on and so forth. The events go from, like I say, a two-person conversation that you sort of sit and eavesdrop on to Night of Stars, which is, you know, a huge, I think it's one of the most important fashion nights in the world. It is the Academy Awards of the fashion industry. Having this organization is tremendously important to the whole fashion, all the members of the fashion community at large. We're very proud that we're able to bring our best editors and influencers. there's been a whole series of great retailers and designers and professionals through the years, and we're sort of passing on that legacy, which I think is very, very important.
So our FGI board and I just love that video because it's always really energizing to us. It's of course from our headquarters in New York, and it just showcases the FGI mission, why we volunteer our time to
all
this
you have to
organization.
do to lose weight
Oh,
and have the perfect body is how many times
YouTube. Okay. But we just love being able to connect with all of you, and it's amazing, you know, local businesses like tonight's panelists, and that's why, you know, we love what we do here at FGI. And I really wouldn't know any of most of you or tonight's panelists if it wasn't for FGI. So I'm excited to introduce you to our panelists. Let me pull up, we've got their bios. So our panelists tonight, Mary Clarke, Daphne, Benzaquen, and Lisa Hu. Mary Clarke has been a global presence discovering top models throughout Mother Management, the company she founded with her husband 25 years ago. The couple has been dubbed the fairy godparents of the modeling world by the Seattle Times and powerhouse model scouts by Vogue. They launched the careers of Ashton Kutcher, Karlie, Kloss, Grace Hartzell, Alana Arrington, and that's just to name a few. Mary began her career 30 years ago producing fashion shows and was the weekly fashion and beauty expert at the ABC affiliate and host associate producer of the cable television show Personal Style with Mary Brown. She's a speaker, author, podcast host of Mother Mary Monday, producer of the annual show Tribute Fashion Fest, and continues to discover and nurture models throughout the USA. Daphne Benzaquen is a creative designer, CEO, and founder of daph, a St. Louis-based fashion and lifestyle brand inspired by her Peruvian heritage. Daphne was inspired to start daph while pursuing her MBA at Washington University's Olin School of Business. After having trouble finding a backpack that was functional, highly quality, and fashionable, she decided to design her own bag, incorporating the unique materials and craftsmanship of Peru. And that's when daph was born. Founded in 2016, daph is one of the only US fashion and lifestyle brands that solely combines modern, timeless designs with Peruvian resources and hand craftsmanship. Lisa Hu is the founder of Luxe & Nix. They design luxury functional handbags for the modern woman who is going places and trying to make a difference in the world. After spending over a decade in the corporate world and launching her own business, Lisa understands the need of the on-the-go female because that's who she is. She is passionate about designing products that help women do more and achieve more through innovation and functional design. The name Luxe & Nix comes from the Greek words meaning light and night. This transition was marked by her step out of the corporate financial world and into fashion design. So thank you guys so much for being our amazing panel for tonight, and also for bearing with us as we worked to reschedule this event. We've got some great questions for you tonight. And then again, to all of our guests, if you have any questions for the panelists, feel free to type them into your chat box. And then after we go through some of our questions with the panel, then we'll take audience questions at the end. So to our panel, all of you have impressive businesses that I'm confident you could have made successful in many different cities, but we'd love to hear what specifically in St. Louis you've been able to tap into to find success in terms of resources, special niches, local organizations, funding from grants, investors, etc. And we're gonna start this question with Mary.
Well, we moved here in 2001, and one of the first things that we did was plug into community. We knew how important that was. We discovered one of our first discoveries when we moved here was a guy named Michael Hope. We found him at the Galleria, and he ended up being the face of Louis Vuitton. And his father became very sick. And through a lot of community support, we rallied and did a fundraising benefit fashion show called Threads for Hope. that ended up raising $75,000 for his family. And it was also where we discovered Kloss as part of what we did. Community and plugging into community has been the foundation of what we've found to be one of the most beautiful things about St. Louis. The support of companies like Clarke, who really rally around and want to fuel potential here. And from the time that we've come here initially, the relationships have just been instrumental. I just think that the reality is that one of the most beautiful things about the city is community. And then when the Fashion Fund was formed, of course, we're thrilled to be a part of a lot of the programming and things that they have done. And we believe that the sky is the limit for what can be in the future. We've actually used a lot of this time to kind of pivot and think about how we can pull even closer into the community to do more and help more people within the fashion community here. I think it's really important.
That's amazing and such a great point. Thank you so much. And now we'll take it over to Daphne.
Well, I have to echo a lot of what Mary said. Community has been huge when developing daph, and especially when it comes to sharing my story. I always saw it as like, okay, this is just my story, like this is my life, no big deal. But to other people here in St. Louis, they've been so welcoming and open and eager to learn about my culture and the resources I use and our Give Back initiative and that impact that has not only like helped my business along, but also kept me inspired in the process, which has been very helpful. And the ability to just reach out to so many organizations like FGI and the Fashion Fund and Mosaic Group. And I'm also part of like Global Design Feature and even my co-working space. There's so many different resources and different perspectives a business can have that, you know, like I can find my accountant here in my co-working space and they have a different strategic view of how I should approach my business and business decisions. And then I can reach out to a friend from FGI and talk about fashion and just people that are just open for feedback and open to connecting me to more people to help me grow. So that's something I really cherish and really has helped me grow as a business and as a business owner. So
I love that. And something that you said about people re-energizing you, I think is so important too, because as an entrepreneur and just really anyone, I'm sure, you know, everyone goes through their ups and downs, but sometimes you have to have other people re-energize you as an entrepreneur so they get excited about your mission and what you're doing when you kind of forgot about that because you got stuck in the day-to-day. So I think there is so many people cheering each other on here in St. Louis, which is such a great point. And then what about you, Lisa?
So that's such a good point. I mean, I don't know how many sessions we've done where I'm like, Jessica, am I doing the right thing? And you're like, you're good. And I'm like, okay, great. So just, you know, I know you kind of mentioned earlier, I have a complete corporate background. I had no experience in fashion design except for the fact that I loved creating products that made people super productive and made them look good and feel good about themselves. So I started off on a journey of not knowing how to design anything, and St. Louis was my source. It's my home. It's where I've gotten my inspiration from. It's where this is the grassroots. And you know, since I started having this idea of creating this functional bag for the on-the-go women, to creating the prototype, to finding friends in St. Louis that was in this industry, to all the way being a part of the St. Louis Fashion Fund. And I saw Susan's on here too. Big props to Susan on creating the Fashion Fund. I'm actually in the Fashion Fund space right now, so that's also another great perk about being in St. Louis. And yeah, and then all the way to, we recently got the Arch Grants too, which is equity-free funding to start the business. I mean, there's just so many different resources in St. Louis. You know, I can't even imagine myself starting my business any other place outside of St. Louis. So that's kind of, I guess, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that's so amazing to hear. You know, I know for most of you, if not all of you, your businesses started here because this is where your family was. So I didn't want to ask why is your business based here, because a lot, you know, you're from here, but just hearing that, you know, all of you have experience working in other parts of the country and partners in other parts of the country. So hearing you say that you can't even imagine starting somewhere else, not that you're just stuck starting here, you know, is so amazing.
Yeah, I've traveled elsewhere to a lot of different cities and seen a lot of different places. There's just nothing more, I guess, welcoming and warming than the St. Louis community here.
It's so amazing to hear. So, you know, one thing we often hear is that successful business owners like Warren Buffett will say things like the secret to success is saying no to almost everything. And while there are many successful businesses based in St. Louis that really don't get involved with the local community, all of you are quite the opposite. Why have you chosen to say yes in so many ways and ingrained yourselves in the local fashion and business community? And I'm going to start this question with Daphne.
So one of my goals for this year is to say no more, and it hasn't been going very well. But I just find that there's always opportunity to learn. So that's why I always like put my, you know, sometimes you have those long days and you're like, oh, do I really, well, before all this, do I really want to go to that event? Like, I'm so exhausted, I could do something else. Like, am I really that energized? But it's totally worth it because I either meet someone really cool or like I get a new idea for a new product, or I just learn about someone else's story. And that just, once again, keeps me really motivated. And just one of my first mentors always said, like, I remember the moment I just like LinkedIn messaged her and I was like, hey, I'd love to buy you coffee and just learn about, you know, your design process and everything like that. And she was like, yeah, I love that. And then she was like, I'd love to mentor you. But I do want to teach you like to pay it forward. And the reason I am mentoring you is because my mentor told me to do that. And I firmly believe in paying it forward with everything you do. Like I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't met with other designers that design handbags as well. And some people might think like, you know, that's kind of weird. You guys are direct competitors. What would you learn from each other? Like they'll steal all your ideas. And I just think that just having a conversation and learning, you know, what worked, what didn't work with you, and knowing in yourself that, you know, like you have your own product, you have your own story, and no one can do what you do the way that you do it. So why not share things, share resources, you know, share things that are working for you, what may not work for you with other people, and just diving into those organizations because there are so many in St. Louis and we should be grateful for that and taking advantage of it. So I've just always seen it as a positive and always trying to approach all these events in a positive light and saying, you know, like maybe I'll teach someone something today at this event, and that's totally worth it in my book.
I love that. I love your pay it forward mentality. That's amazing. And what about you, Lisa?
So, you know, something that I think a lot of us, and I almost forgot too, which is so much of building a brand is about relationships. And when you know, in particular, if you're based in St. Louis, from St. Louis, you know, your biggest supporters are going to be here. So, and, you know, I can't stress that enough, you know, take care of the people that are taking care of you. And so being involved in these communities, you know, it might be like, hey, someone's just asking you for a quick advice. To Daphne's point, pay it forward, because I've had people in the community that helped me along the way. And in addition to that, you know, like really when you're, you know, we can, you know, go down the path of like, you know, wholesale or direct to consumer or whatnot. So we're pretty much mostly direct to consumer. And as a direct to consumer, you know, what I realize is like, it's a ripple effect. So what I mean by that is this is our home. This is our home base. This is our biggest community supporter. And that is a ripple effect that goes outward. So St. Louis is our inspiration, and you know we create and design here, and we get a ton of inspiration from the city of St. Louis, and we take care of our people in St. Louis as well. And in return, they help us spread the word across the nation, across the globe. And, that's kind of my mentality. It's like, this is the community you live in. They're going to be your biggest supporters. Take care of them and they'll take care of you.
I love it. So many great points. And then Mary, you mentioned, on the previous question that even right now during this time, you're thinking of even more ways to pour into the community. So, what's one reason why you guys, even though, most of your work is in New York and maybe LA and all over, what's one reason why you really choose to stay connected with the St. Louis community and give back?
Well, we've seen how it's just foundational from the very beginning, as we would, discover somebody, find somebody with the intent to have, get them launched into another market. It was still our job here to create a creative community that could help put together a strong book, to put together, use local designers. We worked really closely with the magazines to create things. Attilio was a big part of our life when we really started to kind of get everything going, and Jill Manoff, and I look at how that kept growing. So our philosophy is always that we all win when we all come together. And from the time that we stepped foot in St. Louis, it was our intention of, the more that one of us elevates and you bring everybody around and you continue to elevate, it's better for us all. And we are pay it forward people. Also, I've had the most amazing mentors in my life that poured into me. And part of what we do for a living is pouring into now the next people that are coming up. So I just think it's foundational. And the more that we as a community function in that way, we all grow and we all benefit. It's never anything other than that. So we're absolutely people that think it's vital that you do that you stay connected.
I love that. And everything that you guys have been saying about how you feel about the community, what you're doing is creating that community too. We wouldn't have all that support and this, even all these great organizations like Fashion Fund, FGI, Mosaic Project now being able to tap into the fashion industry, and all these amazing different groups that are all really, working together and sharing information, sharing events, sharing opportunities and resources. And it really, like you said, foundationally, it's all tied together because of people like you. So thank you guys so much. Speaking of Mosaic Project, we are so excited to be partnering with them for tonight's event. And not only is it amazing that we have a World Trade Center here in St. Louis, which, like Suzanne said, I didn't even realize until a few months ago. So I need to, once things open back up, really dive into that and explore everything over there. But within that, having this organization that is focused on supporting and connecting immigrant entrepreneurs to also be set up for success here. So I know that, Lisa and Daphne, you both were born outside of the US, but grew up in St. Louis, and then now have amazingly chosen to return to your roots and have your products made in your birth countries, which is really cool. Not only is that probably fulfilling to be able to bring part of your heritage back into your business in this way, but also a really big business advantage for you to be able to be familiar with your areas where your products are made, speak the language of your manufacturers, which I can tell anyone who's been in the supply chain knows that that is, a huge, huge issue when you can't even communicate with your makers. So you guys have that, that advantage with your manufacturing partners. So tell us about how your heritage has influenced your business and your experience as an immigrant entrepreneur here in St. Louis. And we'll start with Daphne for that.
So a lot of my brand is centered around my Peruvian heritage. I've always been very proud to be from Peru. And I always wanted a way to showcase their resources there. Like, I started noticing pretty quickly that what I thought was very common to me on a trip to Peru, I'd bring it back and it'd really draw the attention of my friends, or I'd wear something that was made from there and they'd be like, oh my gosh, where did you get that? And then that's kind of another idea that sparked, and I was like, okay, I need to share this with people here in St. Louis and nationwide, because it's obviously something very different, very high quality and unique, and it's all handmade, which I value a lot in what I design, and the craftsmanship is just something durable, which was very important in my brand, and highlighting the unique resources of like llama leather and baby alpaca fur. I thought they were very luxurious and durable and just something different to bring that reflected a part of me. And what was most important to me was the give back aspect. Like ever since I started, when I was like, I'm going to start a business, I knew it had to have a give back perspective to it, because it was, for me, it just felt like, okay, this is me as Daphne. I am giving back more than, you know, just like writing a check. Like I very much invested in researching like the organizations that we worked with, and I was able to visit and see the like launch of the first project we contributed to, which was a multi-sensory wing in the Amazon. And so that kind of just strengthened my connection to Prue, but it also provided my customer with more knowledge of, hey, like you're not only buying this quality bag that's been handcrafted by the proving community, but you're also giving back to that community in the process and making an impact, whether you're in St. Louis or nationwide. So being able to showcase that and kind of merging my two worlds has been very, very cool.
That's amazing. And then, yeah, you get to tap back into that heritage that even though you've grown up most of your life here, you know, it's a way for you to really be able to tap back into that. And I was listening to a podcast today that Daphne was on, and she was joking that, you know, whenever she says she's from Peru, everyone's like, oh, Machu Picchu. So it's a way for you to be able to, you know, just spread, you know, awareness for the fact that there's a lot more than that in Peru, and really help expose St. Louis and America, you know, to not only fashion, but also other parts of your heritage from Peru.
Exactly.
So and Lisa, what about you?
Hey everybody, so my family, I'm a first generation Chinese immigrant. So my whole family came here. My father came here to get his PhD in economics at St. Louis University. So that's how we call home here. So first, I want to call out the white elephant in the room, because there's this common misconception, and I think some of you guys probably logically know that it's untrue, but there's a common misconception, which is anything made in China is of poor quality. I want to say that 90%, statistically speaking, 90% of all products related to handbags are either sourced or made in China. And so I just want to clear that first point. And second point is, just because I know that's kind of a white elephant, you know, the sourcing process is very complicated. And I know Daphne kind of downplayed how difficult it was for her to source it, but I know even though you speak the language itself, you probably went through a lot of trial and tribulation to try to find your maker. And so we ultimately the maker that we have, it's a small family shop. It's a mom and pop. They have some staff as well. Each of them have over about 20 years of experience in handbag making. The pop is actually, he used to make handbags for Prada. So the quality is excellent, and I would never ever give my customers anything less. That said, I'm still, you know, a big timer all about St. Louis. So I actually tried sourcing our materials and product creation first in St. Louis. I even went to New York to do it. And I looked all over the United States. And most of what I found for handbags was sample houses. That means they won't do anything more than a few on hand. And so it was very difficult. But that being said, you know, as soon as I quit my corporate job, I was like, hey, I'm going to go to the international fair. At the time I was in Hong Kong, and search for my maker. And that's when I found out that most of them were made in China. And, you know, I speak Mandarin, and in some ways it was to my advantage. You know, it was, but still at the time I still felt like a foreigner to the country, because, you know, I mostly look like and dress like I'm Americanized Asian, and I knew nobody in Hong Kong. So So it was a long process, but I was ultimately able to, basically I asked around. Ultimately, I didn't find any of the vendors at this large international trade show, which had thousands of vendors, to be suiting. So what ended up happening was it was a referral because I spoke the Chinese language to this small batch house that was making like high-end bags for other high-end brands, and that's how I came across the little maker shop. But from a procurement standpoint, supply chain standpoint, man, I wish that there was something in St. Louis that I could easily communicate with and talk to. It's just not readily available here. But that being said, it's something that I'm learning to kind of balance. So I have my day job, which is I operate Lux and Nix, and my night job is I'm designing products and talking to my manufacturer. And that's an advantage that, yes, I do have that advantage because I speak Mandarin. But also I know that there's many ways to, because I know I'm trying to put it in context of some people here that might be thinking about starting their own brand. There's always ways to go about finding a manufacturer. It depends on the product group too. So some product groups can be made in different countries. Some in my case, a lot of them are made in China, and I was able to speak the language. So that was an advantage that I have. But you can find translators, or you can find procurement agents to help you during that process. So hopefully that's kind of helpful.
Amazing. And then what has both of your experiences been being foreign-born entrepreneurs here in St. Louis? Like, how do you think that has that been an experience to you?
I mean, I think that it's been,
Go ahead.
I think that it's been very welcomed. I think I previously mentioned that people are very open to learning about Peru, and I'm very much into sharing more than, Machu Picchu, like I mentioned before. People just are eager to learn, and they appreciate the quality of the product and the story behind it and the impact it's making. So I definitely see it as a warm welcome, and it's very encouraging, and it just keeps me motivated.
Love it. What about you, Lisa?
So it's interesting. I just had this whole conversation about so it's Asian Heritage Month, and being an Asian in the Midwest, we're kind of bucketed into you're either a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, which I was an accountant before. And so, like as an Asian, I don't know if you guys ever heard this, but an Asian B is an American F. So basically becoming a designer to the Asian culture was an F. So like it was, it was a disappointment to my own family, being Chinese and not following the stereotype. That being said, I look for resources outside of sometimes my family, because of, not to say they do in a very loving way, but it's just to say, if it wasn't because of the support in the St. Louis community, if it wasn't because of all of you guys here, and because of, FGI, I was able to travel to different cities and meet different FGI members. Because of the St. Louis Fashion Fund, I was able to get a lot more brand awareness. If it wasn't because of the St. Louis community and the support, I don't know if, it would have felt it would have felt pretty lonely. I know that's more of a personal story to share. It's just to say that, I had to step outside of this bucket that Asians usually are bucketed in. And, but it was against the Asian cultural norm. But because of the overwhelming support that I got from the St. Louis community, I never skipped a beat. I'm still so fulfilled and so happy to be a part of this.
Oh, I love hearing that. And I'm just excited, that you guys have both been able to find so many organizations to connect with. And, you, as you said, are paying it forward because you're probably that support system for someone else here too. And maybe you'll inspire someone who thought that, oh, this really isn't what I should be doing. I'm supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer, an accountant. You'll inspire them to maybe tap into another side of them that they didn't really think that they would have that support in before.
Yeah, I hope so.
And then for Mary, you know, I know that the modeling world itself is really a beautiful mosaic of people from all over the globe. So what has your experience been with working, you know, with international models, especially from here in St. Louis?
Well, we've had some international college students that we've been able to connect when they would go back to. We had a girl that we were able to connect and place in Milan, which was really wonderful. But one of the things I love, kind of piggybacking on that whole story and following something that maybe is not necessarily a traditional path, and that is international and global. We did an interview today, Jeff and I, and one of the things that we discussed that I think that we're most proud of, that these young people that we get to manage, get to experience, is the world. You know, we can have, oh, sorry guys, Mercy, no. We can have, I knew that would happen as soon as Jeff left. We can have somebody come who it would never have gotten the opportunity to travel internationally, experience the fashion world, and bring it back, and you see the growth that comes from that. And I think that's one of the things we're most proud of, is that influence, that global influence that you just can't place a value on it. It's immeasurable.
I love it. And you're giving that opportunity to them, you know, through this career. So that's amazing. So my next question is, what advice would you give to local fashion entrepreneurs to help them take advantage of what St. Louis has to offer that could positively impact their business? And I'm going to start this with Daphne.
So a couple of things. I would definitely recommend that they ask for help when they need it. And don't be afraid to ask for advice whenever. So I have a lot, like, I would say I know a lot of people around St. Louis, and the reason is because I put a lot of effort into that. And I wasn't scared to reach out or LinkedIn message them and email them and be like, hey, I need help, or like, hey, I saw you in this article, I'd love to learn about you, and maybe like get some feedback or anything like that. But in turn, when they do respond and they say, sure, I'd love to help, because they usually will. And if they don't, like, the worst thing that could happen is that you hear no and then you move on, but at least you asked. Be ready with questions. You know, everyone's time is very, very valuable. And so I just have learned that if you have like your questions ready, if you know a little bit about them and like how that connects with you, that has been very beneficial to me in growing myself, but also learning about other people and picking up skills that I might lack that they have and learning from them. So that has been really, really essential to me. As well as, oh, I had another one and I totally am blanking right now. Ask for help, and then, I don't know, you might have to come back to me. Okay, it's gonna bother me.
And then what about you, Mary? What advice would you give to local entrepreneurs?
Well, first of all, never let geography limit you. I mean, I built this business initially in Iowa, which made absolutely no sense, but I was so determined, and I would immerse myself in as much knowledge as I could get. And then when we moved here, I agree, we've always stayed connected with people within our community, without in the boundaries of our community, to learn. And it's a huge part of what we love to do, is to really fan the flames of a young entrepreneur, because I know for me, it made a huge impact on me. So I would just agree, don't be afraid, and don't limit yourself. Now more than ever with technology, you know, the opportunities are limitless.
It's so true. And what about you, Lisa? Oh, you're on mute.
I was just listening to Mary that I got so entranced by it that I was like, oh, I forgot it was my turn. I would say, do not be afraid. I think there's a mentality that, oh no, that can't be me, type mentality when people are going out for resources or asking people for help, to Daphne's point earlier. Or, you know, like when I applied for the Arch Grants application, you know, I had this little voice in my back of my head, like, oh, it can't be me. And I had to squash that voice. And that's a lot of what you have to do as a person that's starting a business. And as an entrepreneur, you have to squash that fear voice, like of being afraid of you not being the one, being afraid of you failing, because you will fail, but that's okay. You have to accept that. And as long as you can push through that and just constantly keep your chin up, and you know, it's kind of like a numbers game, right? People do it in dating. Like, the more people you date, eventually you'll find the one. Same thing. The more, you know, you have to feel lucky. You have to be looking for that luck. The more you go for it, the more you become fearless, the more you'll accomplish. And people will only see the accomplishments. They won't see all the failures that you've encountered.
So true. And then, like, we're hearing, I think the overarching message tonight is that this is such a supportive community, that it's not one that you should feel afraid to have a little failure or hiccup here and there, because everyone is really cheering you on.
Yeah.
Okay, I remembered. It's kind of along those lines too. So, okay, and I'm still working on this, but I've noticed as an entrepreneur, the highs last like 2 seconds and the lows last forever. So I don't know if it's just me, but like I'll have a bad day, or like something like, you know, my shipment is delayed in customs or something like that. And it's just like, I just dwell on it for hours. And then like, I'll like, you know, have a feature in, you know, the press, and it's just like, oh, that's great. Okay, move on. I've learned that I really need to take the time to kind of like celebrate myself for a little bit, you know, like whether it's like buy an ice cream or, you know, I don't know, take a nap. It's definitely something that I think as an entrepreneur, like you could struggle with, but it's important to be like, you know, like let's take a time to like give yourself a pat on the back. You know, you did a good job and you worked hard for that. And like Lisa mentioned, like you deserve that, you know, like you worked hard, like why not you? So take time to, you know, celebrate yourself.
I think that's such a good point. I saw you post that the other day, and it's, you know, it's so easy for us to focus on all the things we have to do or the things that went wrong. Or I'll never forget I used to do event planning for a nonprofit, and I remember, you know, after an event, there'd be like the 100 things you did right. And if there was like 2 things wrong, those were the things you focused on, and, you know, and it's like, we do that to each other. We're so hard on ourselves. So it's such a great point that we need to make sure to have that balance in, you know, the cheers that we're giving for ourselves, while still, you know, staying focused on the things we need to do or need to improve upon. But again, that's what's so good about the community, you know, when you surround yourselves with those people supporting you, because you could be down in the dumps and all your friends are like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing, you know, and they're reminding you of those successes that you have, or maybe a success you didn't even know about. Maybe you did an interview and you didn't even know that it came out, and, you know, just things like that. So again, I think, you know, just this realizing that we have such a great supportive community here, not only from a business standpoint, but from a cheering on standpoint as well, which is great. So now that we've said all these amazing things about St. Louis, I do have a question that, lastly, this is our last question before we go to the Q&A. Is there something that you've seen and loved in fashion and business communities of other cities that you think we could and should implement here in St. Louis? And I'm going to start this one with Lisa.
Yeah, so I think we need to, as St. Louis, we have so many resources, and we don't brag about it. We don't come out about it. We don't talk about them. Just recent, you know, it's so interesting. Just recently, I keep hearing, you know, oh, did you know that I recently heard, did you know that we have a place that makes like canvas awnings? I know that like sounds completely different than what I do, but I'm like, canvas awnings, if a place can make canvas awnings, maybe they have the technical ability to help me make a zip pouch. So one thing I need to clarify is like with, our products are really technically difficult because of like compartments with like shoes in them. I don't know if I ever showed this to you guys, but like, so they can't make something that's like super technically complicated, but that's a next step for me to say, hey, maybe they can make something like a pouch. And, you know, as a designer, your head kind of goes into different ways. I know, you know, Jessica, you, for Mount Indigo, you procured like things for jumpsuits, right? And like, it was from a St. Louis local shop. And it's like, where did these people come from? Why didn't they even ever tell us about it? And, you know, granted, some of it takes a lot of, you know, imagination too. You're like, if they can do this, can they do this? And then you have to have a conversation with them and try to make it work. But if there's a way for us to know what the resources are and have those resources come forth and say, hey, hello, we're here, it would really help the local community and local designers thrive. I think that's one thing that is missing, is not knowing where to go for the resources, even if they are in St. Louis.
It's so true. You know, it's so, one thing I love about St. Louis is that it's really humble in a lot of ways, but then it's also, since we're not bragging enough about those things, the word isn't getting out enough about them. So it's such a
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Mary? I know you travel all over. You're familiar, you know, especially obviously with New York and all these big fashion cities, but are there things that you've seen in other cities that you think we totally should and could implement here in St. Louis?
I mean, we talk a lot about, in New York specifically, even though it's so competitive, obviously within our industry, the modeling agency and management industry, there's still a connection. They still get together and do a lot of things socially. They still will communicate on how things could be better. And I think it's because their lives hinge on it, where sometimes if you don't have to, you don't, if that makes sense. And I think that's one of the reasons why when we're there, we feel so connected. We spend a lot of time in Nashville also. I think Nashville is an amazing fashion city, and it wasn't that long ago a fashion city. And we have friends who are photographers and people that are immersed and a part of that. And I really feel like they've been incredible at creating a lot of things that, just to your point, have brought the spotlight there, and now all of a sudden people see it as a fashion place.
Right? You hear so much about Nashville now.
Oh my God, it's incredible. I mean, there was a point at one point we were considering moving there. We were like, it's such a thriving. So I do think the more we come together and talk about how we can be supportive of each other, do more events to rally the troops, the better. Like, we literally will all benefit. So that's how I think it can be advantageous to everybody.
I love it. And there's been so much talk, you know, over the years. And then even I feel like last year, and especially right now, with bringing all these different kind of arms of the fashion industry together. And I love the word ecosystem that Fashion Fund was using a lot this year, because it's more than just a community. I like that the word ecosystem points out that everyone has really this place in this puzzle, you know, that comes together as our local fashion industry here in St. Louis. And I think now, you know, even more than ever, we're all kind of coming together to kind of see what our strengths are, how we can help each other out, sharing more information and resources, cheering on new people that are wanting to start new projects and helping them find kind of like their niche with how they can fit in.
One more quick thing that I think we don't do enough of, and I think that it'd be great to really think through how to do this. The young people, will hold an open call, and obviously it's for them to come to find out about being a model. I cannot tell you how many times young people have walked through our door. I'm talking late teens, early 20s, that they've designed what they have on, that they've painted their sneakers and they're amazing. Like, and we will literally go, I have goosebumps talking about it. How can we help these kids? Because the more that the fashion world has youth and intermingled, the more vibrant it's going to become, the more it'll keep fueling, and everybody benefits. So that's the other thing I think we need to figure out, how to create more of creating opportunities for young people to show them support, especially ones that wouldn't have access to otherwise. I think it's vital.
It's so true. And it kind of touches on a topic that we talk a lot about in FGI. We have a lot of educators on our board and in our group, and they're always reminding us to pour back into the students and to tap into the students. And like you said, you know, the students are the ones who are in that age group that they're like on the pulse of fashion.
Absolutely.
You know? We realize we hit that day where we're like, we don't know what's cool anymore. We got to keep up. Like, it's just like you know, they're just breathing it. They don't realize that they just know what's cool because they're that age group. So it's like, we have to stay tapped into them, because not only do they know that trend that's coming before we do, you know, we have to read it in like an article or like see it on the streets a couple times to be like, okay, that's a trend. Like, they just know it because that's, you know, what they're seeing and wearing every day. So they're bringing those creative ideas and creating new trends.
Yes.
But then they're just always so on touch with the pulse. So it's like having them be your intern, giving them free or discounted tickets to events, helping support them with their ideas is such a win-win. So I love that you brought that up. And Daphne, what about you? And then the Nashville thing too. I think if Nashville can do it, we can do it. So we gotta.
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
Or just all take a trip to Nashville and do a little.
Let's do it.
Okay, what about you, Daphne?
I would have to say, like, we as a city are so fortunate to have so many, like, so much education here and so much experience in fashion. So I think that showcasing our thought leaders here would be very beneficial, whether it is, because I know like this past year I've traveled to New York a lot to go to trend reports and trend shows and even find hardware there because I could not find it here. So bringing those resources, or at least spotlighting them, would be super beneficial, because I mean, we know that stuff. We shouldn't have to go to New York to go sit through a trend report. And I guess it's like, yeah, you can watch it online, but there's just a different feel with, you know, having that resource there, like going up to them and be like, hey, can I buy you lunch next week and we can talk about this more? Or like, how did this develop? That would be very beneficial to me as a designer. And, you know, keeping up with the trends, like you were saying, like with the younger generation, like I just have a design intern for the summer, and we just started working together, and she has already taught me so much in the way she like saw like the design and what's happening, and her thought process behind it was just like so incredible to me that I was like, okay, I wish there was more of that. And I know there is here. It's just spotlighting it and making it like, because I am a self-taught designer, like that I don't have those innate skills, and I wasn't taught all those special processes. I kind of made them up for myself. So having kind of that knowledge base here and access to that would be super helpful.
It's such a great point. And, you know, this event originally was going to be at WashU. Mary Rupert was going to host us at their fashion school. And so this is a great reminder that not only do we need to make sure we do another event there, but also maybe hold more fashion events at the local fashion schools, make sure that students know that they're welcome. And then they don't even have to be students of that school. You know, like Mary said, just anyone that is younger, that's interested in fashion, not have them be intimidated to come to those events, and let them know that they're going to be encouraged, their ideas are going to be welcome with open arms. So that is such a great point of that opportunity here. And then we know that that would be helpful for all of us too, because you never know how uncool you are until you have a student that's telling you all the new fashions that you really need to be looking into. But I love it. Well, you know what? Thank you guys so much. I know that we probably have a lot of questions from the audience, and I really am appreciative to Lauren from Venture Cafe